Welcome to the Turning Lemons into Lemonade podcast. Each week, your host, Amy Mewborn, business strategist and advisor, will bring you the stories of how successful women entrepreneurs turn their tragedies into triumphs to create the businesses that are changing the world today. And now, your host, Amy Mewborn.
Hi, I'm Amy Mewborn, and welcome to the Turning Lemons into Lemonade, episode 20. This is going to be a solo episode, and it's something that I've been wanting to talk about on the podcast for a couple of months at this point, but it's been something that I've really not been in a position to be able to talk about just because every time I talk about it, it starts to make me cry. So we're going to talk today specifically about the things that happen in your business and your life that kind of derail you, and the things that you have to figure out how to work through or work past in order to be able to show up in your business on a daily basis, especially when you have clients that are counting on you day in and day out. So today's story is all about my little doggie, Emma. And Emma came to our family in 2004. She was a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. And when we first got her, she was about 12 weeks old and she was about 3 pounds. And she was so small that she could fit in the palm of your hand. And we brought her home that first night and she was so small that she couldn't run. She hopped like a little bunny rabbit. And it was the cutest little thing in the whole wide world. And we were completely in love. And so day 2, we put her on a leash and decided to take her into the Petco so we could get her food and all the little things that she was going to need. And Emma showed us immediately how spunky she was going to be. So Emma decided she did not want to walk on a leash and she did not want to follow us. So she promptly sat her little tushy down on that concrete floor and she basically said, "I'm not going." So funny thing is, we really wanted to teach her to walk on a leash. So it probably took us, maybe 45 minutes to an hour to get through the store because Mike has her on the leash and I'm kind of walking in front. Come on, little doggy. And so, she would vacillate between following behind me and sitting down and being like, "I'm not going." So ultimately, Emma ended up being, I think, one of the very best animals you would ever find in the entire world. She was tremendously obedient. She lived to please. She was great about wanting to be near you, but not necessarily having to be on you. And she just was everything that I think I could have ever imagined in having a family member. And for those of you that know a little bit about my story, Mike and I don't have kids. I'm 42 and I had a stroke at age 29. And so Emma was kind of going to be the child, and she was the child that we've had for the last 14 years. And we would put her in a bag. We would take her through the airport. We would take her to hotels, and she was always just absolutely perfect. So unfortunately, over the past year, Emma's health really started to decline. And we moved here to Vegas. And when we were on the road, she was probably not her same spunky self last year. And when we finally got settled here in Vegas, she perked up and, there were a lot of things that were a little bit more back to normal, but she never was really quite the same. And unfortunately, this year in May, Emma passed away. And it's probably, I would say, the hardest day I've ever actually had in my life. My parents are both still alive. I've lost a couple of grandparents, but Emma has been with me and Mike for 14 years. And Mike and I have been together for 17 years. So she's been with us and been part of our family for just about as long as we've been a family. So the morning that she passed away, Mike came up the stairs and he was coming up the stairs and he was sobbing, but I didn't realize he was sobbing. He actually sounded like he couldn't breathe, and I was afraid he was having a heart attack. And when he got to the top and walked into the bedroom, he said, Emma's died. And for those of you that have little fur babies, or for those of you that have had an animal in your life for a very long period of time, they become very, very important to you. And I work from home, and you're here in my office today. And when I launched the podcast, my first episode that I recorded, Emma was laying here in her bed in my room. And we got probably about 22 minutes into about a 28-minute episode, and all of a sudden Emma had the scratches, and she's just scratching, and she ends up pounding on the floor. And so you actually heard little bits of that in the episode. So on that day, it was a Sunday. Fortunately, it was a Sunday because I was just wrecked. And I pretty much stayed in bed all day long. Mike had to go to work for a little while, so I actually rode with him and sat outside while he was there because I did not want to be left alone in the house. So we came back. I went and laid back down into bed, and I just basically cried all day long. But the thing is, I had clients, and on Monday morning at 10 a.m., I had my first appointment, and I knew I had to pull it together, and I knew that I had to show up. And as awful as it feels when you're going through things, sometimes having someone that's counting on you really does help you get up, show up, and put on your best face, even if it's not a real face for a little while. One of the things that you often will hear me talk about is when I first joined financial planning, they kind of had this mindset, fake it till you make it. And we were a bunch of 22-year-old kids fresh out of college with finance degrees, and they're telling us, go get a Mercedes, go get a BMW, wear designer clothes, you really need to look the part. And from that moment, I really hated that phrase, fake it till you make it. But I ended up finding later, as I was getting a little older, that there are ways that actually does apply to me and to my business, and maybe to you and yours. A lot of times when you get up and you put on a smile or you put on some makeup and you show up, whether you feel like it or not, all of a sudden things start to feel a little better, even if it's just temporary. So my lesson for you here is, this is a short episode mainly because I just don't want to cry on you guys for 40 minutes or whatever. But I want you to think about one of the hardest things you've ever gone through in your life. And I want you to figure out, how did you deal with that? How did you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go on the next day? And maybe it wasn't the next day. Maybe you had to take 3 days off or 5 days off or a week off or whatever. But eventually, if people are counting on you, you're going to have to show up again in your business. So I want to ask you, how did you do it? Or how would you go about that in the event that something awful happened in your life? For me, it was actually getting up, and that Monday morning, I got on the phone with almost every single one of my clients. I didn't tell them what was going on, and I just fake it till you make it, put on a happy face, and served my clients in the very best way I knew how. And then by the end of the day, they had kind of helped fill me up a little bit when I didn't really feel like it. So for, I would say, probably about a month, no one asked me about Emma at all. And the reason is that every time they did, I started to cry and I just couldn't hold it together. So when you show up in your business, it doesn't mean that you've forgotten. It doesn't mean that you're not honoring whatever has happened, but it does mean that you're taking care of yourself and that you're stepping up and being the person that you want to be day in and day out. And maybe for you, it's sitting down with your journal and writing in your journal. Maybe it's getting up and going to the gym and getting some endorphins running and moving your body. For me, that whole week, it was all of those things. It was turning on music in the background so the house wasn't so empty and so quiet. It was going and getting harder workouts in so that way I felt good in my body. It was every single morning journaling because everything was just so raw. But it was genuinely getting up and doing the job and being a person that my clients expected me to be. So that way it started to feel normal or feel real again. So what I'd really like you to do with this episode, there's no lessons. I'm not doing any freebies. This is just a case of I would love to have you tell me about something that you've struggled with and how you got over it or how you picked yourself up and continued on even when you didn't feel like it. Again, as women, a lot of times we tell everyone the good stuff and the bad stuff is often hidden in deep inside us and we don't want to share it. And I really want to pull back the curtain on that. And I really want us to start being more honest and more authentic and more real with the people that we're surrounding ourselves with. So I know this episode was a little bit of a downer. It was something that I needed to do. I needed to do it to honor Emma, and I needed to do it to show you that we have to be who we are, whether we feel like it some days or not. So thank you again for supporting me, for supporting the podcast, and for supporting all of the women that are sharing their stories with you. We hope that you're enjoying it and would love to have you review, subscribe, and tell us what you're getting from the podcast. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Today's free resource is my checklist for my systems for success. If you know anything about me or my business, you know that one of my key tenements is that I want you to be able to run a successful six-figure business without as much hard work and without as much hustle. The only way to do that is with great systems and great automation. So if you would like to peel back the curtain and see what I do in my business to run my business so I can travel, I can do conferences, I can speak from the stage, and I can do all the things that I want to do while my business still runs in the background without me, please go to the show notes and you'll get more information right there.
Thank you for listening to Turning Lemons into Lemonade, where women go for support and encouragement to hear how other women business owners turn their setbacks into successes to create 6- and 7-figure businesses. We look forward to seeing you next week.